Hello, I hope you all are enjoying breakfast, and if you haven't had a chance, please feel free to help yourselves to all of our food throughout the morning. Good morning, and welcome to the second annual Psychosis Care and Connection Roundtable Retreat. My name is Gabe Dunn. I'm the Director of Brand and Identity Development here at Ellenhorn and one of the organizers of this retreat. First and foremost, I want to say thank you so much to Gould Farm for hosting us this morning, or this weekend, and thank you to all of our wonderful sponsors alongside Ellenhorn and Gould Farm. We are so lucky to be joined by Windhorse, Austin Rig Center, Help in the Home, PCH, Lakewood, am I missing anyone? Oh, and Spring Lake Ranch. So thank you all for being here. It's a true privilege to be here with you this morning at this beautiful place at what I know will be a meaningful and inspiring event. As those of you who attended last year may know, this is not your typical conference. It's a space for honest conversation, shared curiosity, and deep connection. We come from across the country and across disciplines, clinicians, advocates, family members, and those with lived experience. What unites us is a shared belief in care that reaches beyond diagnoses and into the heart of the human experience. At a time when the world feels increasingly marked by isolation, fear, and fragmentation, this gathering gives me something that I've struggled to find lately, which is hope. Hope that in spite of the systems we're up against, there are people like all of you committed to doing this work with courage, heart, humility, and imagination. This retreat is about that hope. It's about what becomes possible when we bring our questions, our doubts, our stories, and our visions into a shared space. When we gather not to debate or compete, but to listen, to imagine, and to build something together. I invite you to treat this retreat as a community in formation. Let yourself be curious, let yourself be moved, and let's see what unfolds when we step outside the usual boundaries and into a space defined by connection, presence, and care. So first up, we have Dr. Ross Ellenhorn presenting. Ross Ellenhorn is a sociologist, psychotherapist, and founder and CEO of Ellenhorn. Dr. Ellenhorn has authored several books, and over the last 2 decades, he has helped individuals experiencing psychiatric symptoms find the psychological and social means to remain outside of institutional settings. Please welcome Ross Ellenhorn.
Good. I've come to the conclusion lately that I'm an emerging adult. Part of that emergence has been that I'm now presenting myself as a sociologist. So for years, I would talk about theories that are psychological and not mention that I don't practice that much in the field, and not mention that I'm not analytically oriented, even though I talk about analytic stuff. And once I was able to do that and say I'm a sociologist who has this interest in these things, it freed me up and made me feel more authentic and more recognized and able to kind of have a contact with the audience. It was much better for me. In the meantime, it also protected me from anybody who is psychoanalytically trained to think that I think I'm some sort of expert. So there was even something adolescent in doing that. Sort of this impression management of myself. And that's why I'm telling you that today, because there's so many people here who are analytically trained. And I'm going to talk about dialogue. Not open dialogue, but I'm going to talk about what this thing is, because I do believe that when we think about psychosis, what we're thinking about is the struggle over dialogue. How to be in a conversation or an interaction where dialogue occurs, which becomes close to impossible at times. It becomes the point in which we often are talking about what do we do next. It is that point where there is not listening and there's not language that we understand, and so we're lost in this kind of incoherence with the person. And so I kind of want to break down what dialogue is for you. But I want to tell you one other thing, which is that dialogue is actually always improvisational. It cannot be coursed through some sort of system. And I really believe that the best I can do today is have an improvisational interaction with you. That I'm really not interested in sort of reading to you something. I'd much rather have a conversation. So if you think about that person in the audience you find sort of irritating at conferences who just raise their hand and say, this is what's on my mind, and you're like, you're not asking the expert a question, you're just giving what's on. That's the person I want to be talking to today, okay? I want there to be as many voices in the room as possible so that then I can respond to it and we can stay in that interaction. So if we do this together, it depends on you. My failure is based on both me failing and on whether I can get that going with you all as far as us being able to just talk. And I've got my notes of everything I need to say today, so I'll get to all of them, but we don't know when I'll get to them if we can make that happen. That's what I'd like to see happen. So I have a first question, and I want you to dig deep. I want you to tell me what you think is the truest thing you know. Beyond any other truth, the thing that you feel is truthier than truth. It is the fundamental truth. And take a second with it. Yeah.
I would say that being lives in language.
Being what?
Being
Being.
lives in language.
Being lives in language. Uh-oh. Virgil.
We are fundamentally, inextricably connected from the very beginning. And what we are struggling now with are levels of disengagement that we are trying to resolve.
So we're fundamentally connected. And I'm not going to rephrase what you said, but the suffering now often has to do with that disconnection. Right? Yeah.
Aloneness is unbearable.
What?
Aloneness is unbearable.
Aloneness is unbearable. None of you are bringing up whether the bombing of Fordo was a disaster, a complete annihilation, or if the bombs are still there, which is interesting. Other things that are coming to your mind.
Love and relationship heals.
Yeah. Love and relationship heals.
Nature is healing.
Nature is healing.
The body is very honest.
The body is honest. Okay. So none of you gave us a version of truth that's about phenomena, things we can see. You only gave us versions of truth that are what's called noumenal. The things, the essence within things, the thing between us, the feeling of something that you can't see. So the truths that you're talking about, these truths that feel truthier than regular truth or known truth that you have on a piece of paper, is what you're digging down to say that's truth. And each of them also had to do with what we talk about when we talk about withness. Each of them had to do with being with or without. So that's the truth that exists in what Bolus calls the unthought known. That's a truth that we actually can destroy by thinking about it too much. It's a felt truth. It's not necessarily a somatic truth. It's the sense of truth that you're experiencing. And you've known that truth longer than you've known the fact-based truth. Because you didn't know much as an infant, but you did know comfort. And you did know holding, and you did know feeding, and you knew all these things that were happening at that point. And you were developing, and you knew those truths probably better than you know now because your thoughts get in the way of it and your craziness gets in the way of it. You knew these things fundamentally. They were the only things that gave you some sense of coherence then. Whatever coherence you could generate, which wasn't much, it was this sense, okay, I know what this is. Not thinking I know what this is. This is a known truth. And so these are the truths that we carry with us, even though we often sort of downplay them as the fundamental truth in our experience. That kind of valid truth is called noetic truth. The noetic. This is what William James talked about, the noetic experience of something. And I think it's a vital part. I think most people feel it's a vital part of therapy. That most therapy is actually trying to get at those experiences, less it is about sort of trying to figure out sort of phenomenological things about the person. It's about how do we get to those shared experiences, these experiences of us sort of cohabitating with each other, a sense of communion with the person. All of those things are what we're trying to do. And those things are really hard to deliver to someone who's having psychotic experiences. Now we could say, you could take the position that psychosis is an okay thing to have, and I'm fine with that. I don't agree. I don't think it's an okay thing to have in modern society. I think it's a terrifying thing to have, mostly in modern society. And you can think that maybe there's another way of being where you don't need to belong. You don't need to feel connected. But I disagree. I don't think there is another way of being than feeling some level of communion and connection with people. So how do we get that to somebody who is living in incoherence, where we don't know how to respond, we don't know how to enter that relationship where there's some sort of response? This is my first foray into asking if any thoughts are going on in your heads. Anything you want to say or question or anything? Thank you.
I'm waiting for you to tell me the answer that you have hit on exactly what I want to know. So this is
Well, you're out of luck. No, I think there are these kind of answers. They're imperfect. Every time you're dealing with the unthought known, it's imperfect. It's not a hammer and a nail, right? But how can we create the right environments for a person to be able to get some sense of that connectedness? So, what is dialogue? Dialogue, yeah. Oh, yeah. Shoot. Yeah. Dialogue dialogue has a long history in philosophy and thought. And it's some real beautiful history. But I think one way to think about dialogue is the place when you're both being heard and listening at the same time, and where recognition is a central element. So Jessica Benjamin talks about mutual recognition, this sense that we're both recognizing each other, and in that recognizing, I'm recognizing you recognizing me. So when people talk about mentalization, it has something to do with that too. It's this place where we're in that place and I'm being heard and I'm listening at the same time. And in that place, when that happens, over and over again, different thinkers from psychology, from philosophy, from sociology, say certain things start to happen. And by the way, that dialogue I just talked about, that's exactly a description of play too. That when you're playing with an object, you're taking this thing and you're actually kind of putting your voice into that object. That object becomes something from outside of you, becomes something inside of you and outside of you. And you're creating this sense that you're in dialogue with that object. So play and dialogue are kind of the same thing on some level. You're creating this kind of flexible space that's also held when you play. Over and over again, this becomes the course towards feeling alive. From Hegel to John Coltrane, the act of being in that space is the act that gets you alive. That's what Paul Tillich and a lot of people called beingness. And when you're in the space of dialogue in life, you're in a state of beingness, and when you're out of that, you're not. So every time you're feeling alive, it's because you're in some sort of state of dialogue. It doesn't mean you're talking to somebody, but you're engaged in the world in a way in which that world's sort of mapped by you, controlled by you on some level, and it also becomes a reflection back to you. That is where our aliveness comes from. According to me, but I'm saying according to all these philosophers too, that's what I believe liveliness and aliveness comes from. But something else happens in dialogue. You begin to witness the life of the other person. You cannot be in dialogue and dehumanize somebody. It's impossible. So dialogue is the antidote to dehumanization. It's what a child is doing when they're playing is they're putting a life into that toy. I wouldn't say they're practicing at it, they're doing it. And they're becoming cultural beings, because when you go to a museum and you enjoy a piece of art, you're in dialogue with it. You are an artist at that point. You are, if you're not enjoying it, it's because you're not doing that. If you're not, this is what this means to me, this is how I'm taking that in, all of those things. So in some ways, we're raising our children to be these cultural beings too. And in play and in dialogue, you witness the other as alive. Hegel had this idea that in dialogue, in the dialectic between things, Geist emerges. And what he meant by Geist is spirit. Spirit begins to enter the room. I'm going to get to Geist in a second because he had these other ideas about Geist too. So in dialogue, the other feels alive. And then there's a third experience. There's two more experiences. In dialogue, there becomes a third in the room. The analytic third. There becomes a character, in a way, of the relationship itself. It becomes alive. If you go out with friends and you have a great night out and you come home, you're less likely to think, that one person was great. You're thinking about the character. I'm sorry. I'm just going to move over here now. You're thinking about the character of the event, that in between. And that becomes the other thing that becomes alive when we're in dialogue. So all these things, All these ways in which we become alive, we witness the life in others, and we witness the life between us, are the thing that dialogue creates. And one reason that might be is because that's what we are as animals. We are animals that are spending a lot of time trying to understand each other so that we can innovate together as a species, as we innovate in groups. And this dialogue is a thing that gets us to what Karl Marx called our species essence, who we are as human beings. When we're in that space, when we're not cut off from that space, we're feeling our humanity in us, and it's alive in us, and we're feeling the humanity in others. This is the person who took this way of thinking and applied it to activism was Martin Luther King. He was talking constantly about how do we become a kind of a unit through hope, and how do we fight this process of making people into things. That was his entire thing was about. And what does it do to the persecutor to not have another person they're dialoguing with because they're making people into things? The persecutor becomes alienated and empty in that process. I mean, I'm sorry for the language, but it's what Hegel called master-slave relationship, that actually the person in charge and persecuting the person is becoming emptier and emptier and needing the other person because they're not seeing that person as alive. They're seeing them as a thing. Thoughts? Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about the whole idea of othering.
Yeah.
Both, in our culture, within our field, where we label people.
Yeah.
That it's almost the antithesis of trying to connect.
Yeah. And I'll get to that a little bit because we're not like a field that's immune to that. I mean, in some ways, it's just this great divide between what actually happens in good psychotherapy and the powerful force we have to decide who's normal and abnormal in our society. We keep coming up with these ideas of how we're not going to stigmatize people by saying that they're sick in the brain, which is just insane to me. Like, oh, we'll no longer see them as moral beings. We'll just see them as sick in the head, and that's going to make them not stigmatized. It's like stigma was about moving sick people out of the tribe. So then we changed it to behavioral health, which means they got sick behavior. It's like this kind of insane process within mental health treatment that's just constantly dehumanizing in that way, And so we're part of the problem, most definitely. Or our field is, not us individually, yeah. You still have you guys? This is also just my need to feel attuned to you, like I'm doing okay. Any other thoughts right now? Yeah.
So I think my truth that I was thinking about was presence, I think, is the greatest gift that you can give to others. And when you say the word dialogue, it has me thinking about, I feel like I'm kind of in a new adolescence right now because I recently went back to get my MSW internship, and I'm thinking about someone in my internship who's diagnosed with schizophrenia for decades. And in the work that I did with him, he didn't really say much at all, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking more about this in the context of when you mentioned like the play therapy.
Yeah.
Right. There wasn't much to be exchanged with him, and as far as actual words.
Yeah.
But over time, we grew to know each other just through like cues in the relationship and just showing up and sharing that presence.
Yeah. That's so. Can you put on the video? So we have to get out of the idea that this is all language. Dialogue is done in gestures. So a gesture is something you do to affect another person's experience. It's not something you do as a statement. A gesture is something, like you give somebody the finger, you're trying to make something, that's a gesture that's trying to make them feel something. And all of dialogue, words and language are gestures. They're not, a lot of people probably know this video, but words and language are gestures. And you'll see this is a dialogue. This is a clear dialogic moment. And the pointing and the looking. And the words she's saying and the sound she's making, they're utterances. They're not really words, right? And so it's all this sort of gesturing that's happening that we do in all kinds of ways. When you care for somebody, your gestures are acts of recognition. When you're really doing it right, care is recognition. If I'm saying I need to make you feel more comfortable, what am I doing? I'm speaking to you through those gestures that I get that you're not comfortable. All good care is an act of paying attention to somebody in a way that's recognizing them. And so when you're under the care of somebody and it's working, what you're feeling often, and I think many of you might recognize this, what you're feeling often is I'm being recognized. Even though the act might be, I'm just taking care of you. I'm getting you tea when you need it. I'm doing this and this. That hosting is an act of recognition, right? And so all of that stuff is part of what gets us into a dialogic space. And again, how do we get somebody who's having incoherent experiences and we don't understand necessarily, how do we get them into that space? How do we get them there? So I talked about, one more thing. Dialogue allows us to create a form around something without that form getting too tight and contained. So that's what we kind of know about actually infants, right? You know, there's this famous quote by Winnicott about like, I see myself in my parents' eyes, now I can see, and now I can apperceive, which means now I can give meaning to the world. That dialogue is always this process of how do I get to a sense of form without that form trapping me, without that form deciding what's happening. And so dialogue is an interesting way for us to get from the unthought known to a sense of coherence, that my world coheres, that something is happening here that makes sense, without it being, we figured it out. Does that make sense, you guys? It's a different kind of knowing and it's a different kind of forming, but it is the antidote to incoherence, which is like the central thing we need to do for our children, and it's the central thing we need in our own lives. We're always having to kind of deal with the terror of what if things become incoherent. And so that's sort of a central thing that dialogue is doing. So I talked about dialogue giving us a sense of life and being. And now I want to give you the second half of this. This shows you what happens. And this, I'm using this as really as a metaphor, not as a scientific experiment that I'm showing you. What's the event when dialogue stops? What happens to us? This is Winnicott, this word called primal agony, this kind of experience of dissolving and feeling like incoherence is taking over. And then this, it's okay, she starts smiling and the kid comes right back. It was a pattern to be a problem. If it happened over and over again. I mean, watch how quickly this happens. Boom. You know, it's like, it's clearly a good parent. Like the kid's like, you're fucking with me, Mom, I know you'll be back. You know, which, yeah. That gets me on a side note. You know where the wild things are? He knows his mom's gonna make that dinner for him. It's hilarious. She says, you go to your room without your dinner, and he goes and he fantasizes, and he has a great time, because he knows. At some point she's gonna say, he's gotta have dinner. And sure enough, he comes back out of that fantasy because he can smell the food she's making. Like that's a perfect example of kind of move, go do your thing. I'm kind of pissed at you, but yeah, I said I wasn't gonna feed you, but I will, you know? So you've got this thing that gives us a sense of connectedness, a sense of realness and aliveness, and that without it, we begin to kind of crumble and fall apart, and it gives us a sense of form, a sense that things have meaning, and it does all those things on some level. And it creates what people in open dialogue call withness. And other people use terms like we-ness, communion. There's all kinds of terms for this event in which there are two of us in a room. It's sometimes called intersubjectivity, which is I've kind of got you in my head and you've got me in yours. But that moves to this other level, which is called that third in the room, this being, this thing That's the between of us. You guys know what I'm talking about? Okay. That may be giving somebody what we're missing in modern culture, which is something you could depend on daily in traditional cultures, which is we-ness every day. I walk out my door, I know what I'm supposed to do, I know my role, I know who I am in the community, and I know I don't have to work hard at figuring out everybody else because I live in this community where we all have a shared belief. And modernity has great qualities to it, but this is one of the qualities we've taken from people. So maybe that experience isn't just sort of an event for psychotherapy, but it's an event where the psychotherapist is like a witness from the community, saying, let's remember that there's a connectedness outside of here. Still making sense? Martin Buber called that I-thou, that he said, all real living is in meeting. When I'm there in that space of meeting somebody, there is a sense of something bigger than us. You know where I'm going, right? There's a sense of something bigger than us, something that's beyond us that we're connected to. Durkheim, kind of one of the parents of modern sociology, said religion was actually the place where you went for collective effervescence. That what religion is the place where you're actually celebrating the in-between. You're celebrating those moments where you're connected to everything, where you feel like there's a commonality between you and your community, and you feel this thing that is not just the character of in-between, but something generalized, connection itself, the generalized sense of connectedness. And I think that that's what we mean when we talk about the therapeutic third, and it's central to dialogue. Dialogue gets us to that. And that's what actually Hegel meant when he talked about Geist. This spirit that's running through you. I'm starting to sound like woo-woo, I hope I don't, because I actually think this is pretty secular. This spirit that's running through you, and it also spreads out. It's part of the world. It's the connectedness in everything. It's life with a capital L. Gregory Bateson had this idea that there's these two forms of thought. One is creatura, which is when you're connected to life and living things. And creatura is a place you can't understand and be part of unless you're in dialogue with it. You can't be in creatura. You can't be in nature without being in dialogue of it. And then the other was pleroma, which is the thing we do for non-living things, which is we can kind of know it and figure it out and see it. And when you mix those two things, when you take creatura and you treat it as pleroma, he called that violence. It's sort of an act of dominance when you start to say, you're a this or you're a that. You start to kind of name it and identify it. And that's what I can send a list of philosophers if you want, but there's philosophers over time that have talked about these two ways of being. One is where you're curious and you're in dialogue, and the other is when you're kind of got things figured it out. And what we call that in the open dialogue scene, which isn't new to anybody, it's called aboutness. There's withness and aboutness. And when you're in a state of aboutness, you kind of are certain, and you kind of got things figured out. And it's hyperform. It becomes forms that are so structured the person can't break through them. It's not form in service of freedom, it's form in service of defining the person. And aboutness is this force. In all of our lives, we sometimes need it, but it is this process in which we become a thing to the other person. Something figured out. I'm not doing a good job improvising, I'm just talking. Any thoughts coming into your heads right now?
You're a fantastic speaker.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I feel so much better now. No, thank you.
Could you add in an actual concrete example?
Sure. Yeah. I'm going to give a positive version. So I say, how you feeling today? And you say, I'm happy. And I say, oh, you're one of those happy people. I know happiness, or not even that. I know happiness. Yeah, happiness. Happiness is a great thing. It's great we all have happiness in our lives. That's aboutness. Witness would be, tell me more. I'm so curious. I'm not really interested in the happiness. I'm interested in you and your relationship with the happiness. You know, all change comes out of our relationship with our suffering, not defining ourselves by our suffering. And all therapy should be trying to get the person to have a relationship with that experience, not be defined by it. And our field has problems with that. And this insane best practice stuff that's going on is insane. We have, you're that broken screw. We have this screwdriver for you over here, and this screwdriver for you over here. Oh, and by the way, we're not going to take anybody who has extreme events, because they just end up not coming to our treatment. So we're practicing on people that are pretty well, who can show up for treatment, and we're doing these little technique things, and then we're claiming we're best practices when we're not even dealing with the severe versions of it. It's insane. So that the sort of movement towards that is also part of a movement in this culture towards conformity. It's just part of that whole process that, by the way, people were terrified in the 1950s about. They were like, we're going towards, this guy Eric Fromm used to write about going towards, it's like, it's here now, right? Did I go off too far on that? Okay, all right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's standing out to me that in a lot of my practice with clients, that when you were talking about the aboutness, that it's just what I slipped into in my practice.
Yeah.
And then also I'm thinking about how like inherently there is a power dynamic where it's really hard to work against the state of aboutness.
Yeah, it's really hard to work against. Yeah. Even in just daily interactions with friends and stuff, to deal with someone's suffering is to deal with kind of uncertainty, and so you kind of want to like get a little control over it. And so they'll say, I'm sad, and you'll say, oh, you're depressed. Or they'll say, I'm depressed, and we'll say, you're sad, instead of just saying, oh, using their language and sticking with them. We're doing it all the time. We're entering relationships always with that kind of orientation towards dominance, So, tell you a really beautiful story about the importance of dialogue. Around the 1890s, the banks and the parks around Mississippi, the Mississippi River in New Orleans, this guy, Buddy Bolin, started playing this kind of music for ex-slaves that was only about dialogue and only about spontaneity and only about improvisation. And it became the American music. That is the force. That is such a representation of what it means to fight against being idified. To go that direction is such an example of how you resist it, to the beauty of dialogue. So happens a not so oppressed guy, although that was on its way, at the same time came with this idea of free association. So this idea of how do we get to dialogue through improv, not through cultural means that are sort of, we know what's happening every day, is kind of a central element in modernity. And psychotherapy is basically improvisational art form. It's a form of improvisation that's oriented towards people recovering and healing. So let's get to psychosis now. Nobody knows what it is. Nobody knows what causes it. We don't. We may never know. It may just be something we can kind of get pictures of in our heads that are kind of noumenal, like this is what it feels like. For me, it feels like it is a person out of dialogue, trying to get to dialogue, but struggling with it, and how to get there. And for me, it's somebody who has had profound experiences of unrecognition and being seen in ways where there was a lot of aboutness. This goes back to last year I talked about him. Artie Lang had this idea that what happens is you begin to feel like, if I say this, it's going to get owned. I can't be me here. If I be fake, I can't be me here. I can't be me anywhere because nobody's recognizing me. And when they recognize me, they're making something out of me. And it's not who I am. And so I begin to go it creates a kind of madness. I have nowhere to go and be me because of all these perverted versions of recognition. That's one way of thinking about it. And that creates this profound incoherence. Incoherence becomes a defense. It's not just that I never got to create form around me, but it becomes, this is my only way to survive, is to stay incoherent, because if somebody tries to understand me, their understanding is the most dangerous thing that can happen to me. They'll crush me by figuring me out. And so I'm in that state. That's one story. That doesn't have to happen from a family. That can happen in all kinds of circumstances where a person is feeling like they're not being recognized in some sort of way. And then as Michael's going to talk about, there's also possibility that trauma has something to do with it. Because one of the elements in trauma is profound disillusionment. which means profound incoherence. The sense the world doesn't work the way people are saying it works. This sort of moral event that happens. And then I'm in the state of incoherence and I don't know how to get out of it because and I'm kind of using it also as my defense because I don't want another experience of disillusionment, of feeling like the world doesn't work. The world doesn't work that way. So those are two theories behind this. But what I think I feel strongly about is that this is a person who is struggling to be recognized and is struggling to not be recognized. That they want in, and they have not had good experiences of being invited in. And so they're struggling constantly with that issue. And the incoherence is kind of their way of saying, can you listen to me, but please don't listen to me. Can you hear what I have? No, but don't hear what I have to say. I'm here, but not so much here. It's a terrifying state in some ways, because it is completely out of dialogue. Any thoughts right now?
Yeah, would you say that's a fighting against aboutness?
Yeah. So yeah. It's about common aboutness in our own families, and it's not only that. It's impingements, which are kind of aboutness, but it's like, or it's all kinds of events where my being became something that didn't belong to me anymore. I'm anxious. My parent gets anxious so much that they're not paying attention to me. That's not quite aboutness, but it is like my entry in this dialogue just went off in that direction, right? And so it's always that kind of sense of I'm no longer being heard, and I'm no longer quite listening in that way.
Which is kind of the basis of evidence-based and manualized therapy.
Yeah. Okay. So let's picture that for a second, because I'm going to get to some dialogic stuff in a second. I just wanted you to picture that for a second. Okay. So here is what it's like to have a first break in our country. First person you meet is probably a police officer. The next event is you go to an emergency room. Emergency rooms are famous for not having any sense of time, especially for psychiatric patients. You could be locked on a gurney for 48 hours in that emergency room. Then you're taken to a psychiatric unit where people are trying to figure out what's wrong with you. That is a iatrogenic response to at least how I'm seeing psychosis. It is pro-psychosis. It is creating a state of being where I'm being observed and contained in this way that doesn't match anything that's going on for me. And most of the people you work with who have some level of psychosis have been through something like that. Not all of them, but most of them have already been through these events. And what we call them when they don't want to be in treatment is difficult to engage, resistant, right? They have all the right in the world to look at us and say, you're going to try to figure me out. Before January 20th, the only extrajudicial way you could remove people off the street was if you're mentally ill. Right? And then we're actually the profession that decides who's normal and abnormal regarding, I don't know what normal means, but that whole thing. So they have all the right in the world to be terrified of you when they walk in, that you're going to make me into this other kind of person. So this idea of how do we connect through dialogue? How do we get in the space of intersubjectivity where I'm holding you in my head and you're holding me in yours, and we're both holding that I'm seen by you and you're holding that you're seen by me? Becomes very difficult for a person who's had these injuries. I don't want to be in your head. It's the last thing I want. I don't feel safe enough for you to have an image of who I am in your head. And yet we're talking about that as kind of a stage towards that next thing, which is I feel connected to some greater connectedness in the world. The therapeutic third that I'm calling effervescent collectivity for Durkheim, that sense I'm part of something. It's removing that stage. They can't get to that place of connectedness. Still making sense? I just ask that when I want to feel attuned and that people like me. But am I still making sense? Yeah? Okay. Yeah.
I would say it sounds like you're talking about like epistemic trust.
Yeah.
From Flanagan.
Yeah.
And can I just say, I was thinking about the program that I'm a part of at BMC in Boston, in community in-home program. And I've often found like most success with folks when we're finding like ways to converse. So it's not words, not sitting across from each other. More recently, we've been playing basketball. This particular, we're holding, I was playing 2-on-2. So I was holding one client in mind, not trying to figure out what's going on there, but trying to figure out how he's going to cut to the basket. That's oftentimes where I found a lot of success in creating relationships with folks. Say, like, all right, I'm not going to try to be traditional here.
Yeah, well, I think I'm going to give you an example of that, all right? I think there's ways to get to that experience like you're doing without spending a lot of time looking at somebody and having a conversation with them. And when you talk about this stuff coming from Hegel, he wasn't into like conversation, he was into doing. And that's how it ended up in Marx's hands. Like, this is, doing is a dialogue. And getting people to do is this sort of force that brings Geist out. It wasn't about staying in conversation, it was about getting out there and doing something. It's central to that. So how do we get there? I'm going to give you a quick example, and then hopefully we'll have time to do a little bit of a conversation about a case. So we had a guy in our program who was already having psychotic experiences, and he was in another country, and he was snorkeling with his dad, and his dad had a heart attack and died. So he's there alone with his dad, trying to figure out how to get help. Finally got help, and then he becomes really psychotic and put away in a psych hospital, and kind of rightfully in some ways, because he was so out of control, sort of kept out of the mourning process within the family during that period because he was having such a hard time. And about a year after his dad's death, and he was in our program, he said, I want to go back to that country and say goodbye to my dad. And I want to go on my own. And he also had this fascination with cuttlefish. Cuttlefish, I mean, they're kind of, we can analyze this forever. They're camouflagers, and they spread out ink to get rid of people. But, and so we started talking about, well, what if we did that here? What if we actually created an experience where you're able to do this here? And we made it around cuttlefish. We made it this kind of cuttlefish ritual. And we gave him this garage we have that's all fixed up. We let him stay in it because we wanted to create that sense that you're leaving this world for sort of the sacred that they do in rites of passage. And we're going to help you develop this full cuttlefish event where you're really doing this rite of passage from your dad being alive to your dad being dead. And so we had drums, we had artists in there, we were doing all this stuff about that. What we didn't know is he reached out to his family, and they all came. And this is extended family throughout the country. Turns out they needed it. So our residential program is just filled with this family now, having this convivial time, seeing each other. And he created that on some level through this ceremony. So it's sort of like his gift back to the family. And for me, we put him in a place of really rich dialogue, a real sense that my gestures, and we do this stuff all the time. We're not just joking. Just like, but just through that act of not, first of all, not saying no to him, right? No, you can't go, but finding this alternative that gave him what we thought he might have needed in that process, got him to this place where he didn't go, and also our sense is that it helped him feel like he was in that space of connectedness with the family. Like he generated that truth that we were talking about earlier, that connectedness. So I think there's all kinds of creative ways we can actually think about how do we create rituals, how do we create art events, anything that gets them to that place where it's not always about language. But it can be about language, and that's where kind of the dialogic work comes in. How much time we got? 13 minutes. Can we try this, Eric? Yeah. Yeah? Oop. Okay. So I asked Eric to come up with a case, and I'm going to try to do this. I don't know if I can do this in 13 minutes. Let's try it. Could Terry and Elizabeth, you go up? So let's just sit up here. So why I want to show you this is they're going to show you a lot about open dialogue later. What I want to see is if we can get to a place where you all have a sense of the person Eric's talking about. By having a conversation that resists aboutness. Our whole job, like in mentalization, it's all about finding a place where you're not mentalizing. In our place, it's all about finding the places where we're formulating and stopping ourselves. So nothing is capturing, everything is about reflection. And we'll see if we can get there in 13 minutes. Or, Gabe, I'm just going to go. All right. Have a seat. Can we get this too? So Eric's going to talk about, I asked Eric in advance. Eric's going to talk about a person he works with who has psychotic experiences, who's on his mind, who's evocative for him. And that's all we want to know. And this comes from this model called affect-based supervision, but it's combining that with open dialogue. So affect-based supervision says if we can just get to the emotion, we might actually learn more about the person than if we, So let's take a second, just close our eyes and just get here. All right, so try to think about this person. And are there any sensations for you regarding them in your body?
I feel physically I feel a tingling on my shoulders. It's funny, my chest feels soft, open. My legs feel a little, I don't know, there's like a shakiness.
There's a shakiness to your legs. There's this sort of tingling here and a softness here. And is there an image that comes to mind?
Image. It's funny. It's like a ring, like a circle. I picture him, and there's a circle shape on the ground around us.
Like on the ground itself? Around the two of you? Around the two of you?
Around the two of us, and it's bigger than just us two. And it's, like a red line circle around us.
You guys have any reflections?
Yeah, I immediately got an image of a jellyfish. And I felt like like I started to feel a little worried that I was going to get stung. Strangely, I feel like this tingle vibration a little bit, and I am imagining light kind of coming from that red circle.
You feel the tingling?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking about how it tingles when you touch tenderly. How it's close to tickling. Yeah. Are there any reflections you want to comment on it?
Yeah. I was surprised by the jellyfish, though there was something in my legs that I felt really connected with that somehow.
Yeah.
Maybe the watery, the movement.
Yeah.
And something about that light. Oh, like I left that, like that was there too.
That light was there too, yeah.
Total, like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I hadn't noticed that there was a light.
But now you notice it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you think about those things, does a new image come into your head, or a new feeling, or?
So I don't consider myself a visualizer.
Yeah,
it's hard for me to visualize.
Well, how would you like to express it? And what would you like
No,
to?
no, I mean, let me try that for a moment. Yeah, I mean, I still visualize that circle around us, but it's a little more vibrant or expansive. I mean, the light is included there.
Now, because the light's included, now you're seeing it as more vibrant and expansive.
Yeah.
Are other people welcome into that circle?
Yeah. Yes and no.
Yeah. What do you mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, the expansiveness is helping me sort of see that there's more. And I'm kind of curious about, because this image of a circle was totally surprising to me when I came up with that there is a boundary.
There is a boundary.
It's not just us, but it's not everything, you know?
Yeah. It's not just us, but it's not everything.
Yeah.
You guys have reflections at all?
I still also am thinking about the light.
Yeah.
When I saw this light, I was thinking about not straight up and down light, but like a cone.
Yeah. A cone. Yeah.
That comes to a point.
Uh-huh. A cone that comes to a point. Where's the circle in that cone?
Yeah, well, like a funnel.
Funnel, okay, yeah. To the circle?
Mm-hmm. I really resonated with the idea of a circle, but the way that it's coming up for me is protection.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was remembering, like, this is a lesson I taught my children, like, pretend there's an invisible circle around you to keep your boundary in your space.
Yeah. That makes me think of the fort in Comfort. You know, the fort net.
The fort,
yeah. I just feel this sort of, I don't know, kindness, kindness or something.
Kindness?
Yeah. Is there anything that we said that evoked anything different in you?
Yeah, I like that word kindness. That's hitting me right now. I had the picture of, it just became more of like, what do they call it, the biosphere, where there was like a globe.
Yeah.
And you were talking, I'm just remembering a story about that biosphere that it didn't totally work. I don't even know if this is true, but that there was stuff let in that wasn't supposed to, you know, how it became an imperfect science. And there was something about that that was very, I was glad. I mean, in this moment, I was, that there's this boundary and it starts off closed, but no, actually, it's good that it's not fully closed. Something like that hit me. That was the picture. I could sort of picture it, this small biosphere.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm just thinking about that cone too. It's something, again, that expansive.
Yeah.
Something that's hopeful, and I don't know, I feel energized by that somehow.
By the cone.
Yeah.
And the sphere and the biosphere.
Yeah, and the light. Yeah.
I was thinking about the word comfort, and the sensation of, for me, when I first find like a lot of comfort with like a lot of holding, and then how naturally that slowly releases.
Yeah. I'm feeling like kind of happy to be with Eric. Like, I like these images. I feel like there's some beauty in what he's saying about this circle that's also, it's good that people can get through it, but there's a circle that makes me, it's kind of joyful.
Yeah, very warm.
Warm, yeah.
And welcoming.
Welcoming, yeah. But protective.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I feel that warmth. Yeah, some play. I mean, the word comfort, I feel some play between comfort and discomfort.
Yeah.
There's something like, and I remember also feeling that wateriness and that jellyfish, like, I don't know, like, it's not straight. It's not, it's not, there's a little mysterious. I mean, water and ocean always feels mysterious to me in some way, and a little scary, but also wonderful.
Wonderful,
like, There's wonderment, but it's dark, a little dark, and what's happening, what's gonna happen. I don't know. There's a lot of. I'm trying to put words to. It just feels like a lot of. Almost different emotions, and that comfort, discomfort is very coexisting.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But the warmth is hopeful, or not hopeful, but safe, like a relatively safe. And I also feel like when you said enjoying being here, there's some kind of regulation, co-regulating experience that this is bringing for me that feels safe enough.
Yeah, it does.
To deal with the mystery.
The mystery of this sort of thing that you're describing something like that.
Yeah.
Like where it will go. Where will it go? Yeah.
There's some discomfort.
Yeah.
But it's okay.
Yeah. That discomfort's okay-ish. Yeah. But I'm gonna end up formulating because it's just too much for me. What he's saying, I just can't stop. So I'm gonna just keep my mouth shut and hear what you guys have to say. Do you have a reflection or a thought?
I do. I'm having this weird sensation that doesn't usually happen to me, where this like story is happening. Throughout this. Like, effortlessly.
What's that story about? I just said about, so we got to be careful. What's that story? Where's that story? What do you mean by a story?
We're on it together, this journey.
Yeah. Like he's telling a story about we're on it together or we're on it together.
No, we're all on it together. I'm following along, but I'm also involved.
I had a similar experience. I was thinking about that red circle, and it became a thread. Almost like a piece of material, a yarn. Connecting us. We're almost like in a circle. So I felt the sense of connection.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So I think my time's up, but I just want to really quickly, I'd like to hear some comments on that, really quick. And then
My comment is a question. I find myself craving context for us witnessing that, how that then is useful for Eric. How did that process illuminate something for Eric in his work with that person? Because that was a very cool process. It was very dialogical, in the moment, connected. I bet that you four had a good time. But I want to know, did it serve Eric? And if so, how? And what was the intention?
So my intention was it doesn't mean it worked. was to see if you all could actually have this experience of the person he was talking about that would be better than an aboutness description. If you had a sense of what was happening between them without describing it. But if you did this as a supervision, you would then say near the end, Eric, now tell us about this person. And then you'd say, Eric, from our experience, are there things that you want to do differently now that you have this kind of image of this red circle and this and that? So you would get to the specific if you were doing affect-based supervision. Is that what you're asking? You say this is aiding him.
As you speak, I'm looking inside to see if I did. I feel like, personally, I feel like I definitely got a sense of Eric.
Yeah.
Not so sure that I got a sense of the person,
Yeah.
and that may be irrelevant.
Yeah.
Really,
Yeah.
I may not need that, but I definitely got a sense of you in the work.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Or maybe you got a sense of him and the in-between, but not the other side of the in-between.
Correct,
So,
exactly.
right. But that sense, and that sense, you can't quite get to it through, this is what's happening for Eric.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to figure it out. It's a different kind of truth that I think's more, all I'm trying to do is that we got to a truth, an unthought known truth, you know. Any other?
Can I just share a thought about that?
Yeah.
In terms of affect-based supervision, as someone who's gone through the process, sometimes you go into supervision saying, I have this problem, I need to fix it.
Right.
And really, this affect-based supervision is about what's going on with you.
Yeah.
That's making this difficult for you.
But what's going on for you is probably a message about what's going on for them. So you're trying to get at them through affect and through image and those sorts of things. You're trying to get to the in-between. But it is, to me, a way of skipping too much intersubjectivity, which is great for someone who's not psychotic, but it might not be great for a psychotic person. It's kind of skipping it to try to get to that other thing, that place of feeling connected to a network, feeling part of a witness experience. And that's why you have these people talking not at you, but to each other, right? And it works really well, actually. You might think that with a psychotic person, they find that strange. It actually works really well, as long as they're sort of prepared for it. So what they're watching is this conversation, not a conversation at them, where you're looking at them in a way that can feel like you're trying to figure me out. It's these people are reflecting in this way, in a language that they may understand better, actually. Yeah, and it's a language that's short. That's another thing. You do not want to challenge a person who's experiencing, serious, and you can see why I'm so bad at this too, right? The person who's experiencing kind of profound experiences of incoherence, you don't really want to be approaching them with long paragraphs. It's not fair to them. And it creates experiences of isolation and disconnection. So you want to be using words, not sentences. You want to be just very brief in your responses. What? Yeah.
I just want to comment on what you were saying. I didn't know about this. There's a style of supervision that's doing this, because I think, I'm being supervised, I also supervise others, and the feeling I get is that it's really hard to steer away from formulation.
Yeah.
And especially if you're in, kind of analytic training or dynamic training, there's a lot of emphasis on you got to diagnose, formulate, and have sort of like a plan and a path, where you're going sort of way. And it's hard to hold that conflict within. Like, how to be comfortable with the uncertainty that you might have an idea, but it's a hypothesis, right? And things might change, and how to stay with the process and the experience.
Yeah.
And a lot of what you're talking about feels like transparent and counter-transparent, like you're talking about a lot in this kind of training, but in a more experiential way.
In a more experiential way.
Yeah,
So I'm just trying to go, what is this? Yeah.
Yeah, that's really helpful for me to think about that.
Yeah, let me just end on one not that interesting note, so it's not going to be a good crescendo, but I'm just going to say it real quick. This is really true that we all struggle with this thing called attribution error, which is that you hear somebody screaming outside your door, and you think, okay, there's an insane person outside my door. You walk outside and discover they're being mugged. Okay, they're being mugged. You go back in your house and you think that was a crazy person outside that door. So that's half of attribution error, which is that we want so badly to have coherence. All of this stuff is about how much do we hold coherence. We want so badly to have coherence that we don't want to see the world as disordered, so we end up looking at the person and their traits, not the state they're in, because the state could get us in trouble. The amazing thing about attribution error is we don't do the same to ourselves. If I'm feeling bad, I don't say it's because of a trait, I had a bad week. I had a shitty interaction with this person. Because we don't want to feel like our inner lives are too disordered. We want to kind of look outside ourselves. In all good care, leadership has to be fighting attribution error all the time. You leave it alone, and the care will move quickly towards identifications in traits, not states. Because that's just a natural place to be, especially when you're dealing with the unknown and uncertainty every day of your life, and with crises. Is that you're going to move towards that. And so leadership always has to be, how do we stay out of the attribution? How do we do the thing that how do we not sit in a resting state? Which is to head that way, is to kind of get us back to that place. You know? This is what happened when Moses went up Mount Sinai. He left everybody behind. He said, I'm going to go get these laws. We're going to learn how to connect to each other through these laws. And while he was gone, everybody got so anxious that they built a golden calf out of their jewelry that they could bow down to, and it was certain it was phenomenological. And then he came down and got really pissed off at it because he's like, no, we're supposed to have this interpretive event, this dialogic event, and now you've created this calf. Like, anxiety and our worries, they get us back to this state, this trait-based orientation of the state-based. And Gabe, I'm going to quit really soon. I'm in trouble soon.
Just a clarifying question.
Yeah.
So, were you saying that you would have a patient witness that process? No. Okay.
Yeah.
I misunderstood.
Yeah. But you'll see later how we work with, we'll be doing open dialogue, so we'll show you how to. Okay, one more question.
The thing, I had a similar question to you too, like, how does this serve the person that you're working with?
Yeah.
But I do feel like I was seeing metaphor, right? And metaphor happens a lot in working with folks with psychosis or working with people in therapy generally.
Yeah.
And also kind of a slowing down and allowing.
Yes.
Which is really a good thing to practice,
Yeah.
you know, for later. You know,
Yeah.
it's good to practice with each other, but in terms of presence, was mentioned earlier, and non-language laden therapy intervention, I think that having a general practice would serve both your work and the work you're doing with another person. That's what I got out of what I was seeing.
So you got, say it again. You got what you got out of what did you get out of
What I witnessed you all do.
Yeah.
You know, once I became like I could turn my brain off from having these kind of questions like, but how, you know, like that kind of quieted, the thing that really impressed me was the slowing down and allowing and the presence and the metaphor. I feel like that was the stuff I was seeing.
Yeah, this is all the world of metaphor and poetics. That's what it all should stay in on some level. Until a person needs certainty to hold them. I mean, sometimes people need that certainty. Sometimes people need aboutness to feel contained, but we should be trying to stay in that space, right? Poetics, what they call referential activity. The more poetics, the better the therapy works. Like, so we should always be doing that. Yeah.
I know we're out of time, but it's pointed, I think. As a psychiatrist, I teach young psychiatrists who are taught to make a diagnosis and formulate it in that way. And if you get the diagnosis right, then you know what you need to know about the person. It's ridiculous.
Right.
So I first, some years ago, thought I could teach young psychiatrists to do psychotherapy for psychosis. Too ambitious, impossible, no good. But what seems to be working the last 2 years is a seminar where there's a very detailed transcript about a conversation with the patient. And the task is to answer the question, what is the human story behind this person's speech?
They're doing this in training?
Yes. And then they get kind of competitive.
Yeah.
And the guy last week really nailed the story.
Yeah.
Everybody, and so then they want to nail the story.
Yeah.
So it becomes a competition for metaphorical listening.
That's great.
And dialogue, rather than a diagnostic reduction to the patient. And it does actually seem to be working.
That's great. That's really great. Yeah. Gabe, am I okay? Am I good? No. All right. Well, wait, I'm around. We could. Okay, one more, and then we're gonna stop.
We're gonna do a full 1.5 hour open dialogue workshop where we can keep this conversation going.
Okay.
But we gotta get there.
So let me just say, I felt safe and alive. So you did a good job. So I appreciate it very much. Okay, thank you very much.